Welcome to the Through the Lens of the EMS Wizard Podcast. My name is Mark. I have
That's
John,
good, Mark.
Walter,
Listen,
and
man,
Terry on with me
Terry,
tonight. What?
before you get
What?
started, Mark, let's just get this straight real quick. Terry,
Okay.
I hope you understand there's no trains or anything in a podcast. I hope that don't deter you in any way, because I know we're trying to do this podcast thing together, but
I'm done. I'm out. Wait.
but you can listen to this podcast on a train.
Oh,
All I'm going to ask for is all those snazzy little selfies that you give to yourself now that you do it with headphones on, so that you're current and you're relevant. I'm sorry about that, gentlemen.
Do I actually get to be here this time and not have my angel wings on?
Our heavenly watching over us.
Heavenly Walter, I actually am here with y'all today.
Walter is with us.
Still here in real person, in real life. I'm here. So yes, no, I am not dead. I am still alive.
I'm in disbelief.
Great.
You should be. You should be, G Mark.
You may do your official introduction now.
Oh well, no, the official introduction, that's way over. We're past that point now. So we've got to get to the business of the evening. So first thing I think people may want to understand more about the crowd here is, what is this lens that we're titled after here, right? What is the lens that you're looking through, John C?
Oh, wow. So that's a great question. I think the lens part of that came from when we started doing that officer program throughout the state. And as we started going through each county and looking at folks from each agency that they were in, I know that Walter and Terry and we were talking about, man, how the similarities are throughout the state. And then it's like, how they're approaching it now, generational. And sometimes it's from a male perspective or a female perspective. The lens really changes, and the biggest efforts one makes coming through, at least looking at it from a managerial perspective, is through the lens that you're looking at. And Terry actually pointed out to me one time, you sure do say lens a lot. It's like, it's going to be a lens that you're looking through. It's this lens. It's that lens. And it actually is true. I was saying it a lot, but that just giving it, the credit to say, hey, we do have to make these efforts to view things. And this group, that's one of the positive things we've had, is we all have a different lens and have these different experiences that's put us through that. So I think the purpose of this podcast is going to be bringing on those different perspectives here to say, hey, give us what this looks like from the lens of, and then that's going to be whoever our guest is or whatnot. But that's where that idea of that lens comes from. And I know that Walter felt that same way when he looks at things. He's like, hey, you got to look at it this way, or other people don't look at it that way. But that's how I see it.
I think that, we don't always have the same perspective that we feel that we always do. And when we come in and we look at different ways that people do different things, one of the good things about, EMS officer classes in person, we did a bunch of them online at first, is you get to see other people's lens when you get to sit down in the same room and talk to them and have some of that conversation, to be able to do so, to be able to understand where different backgrounds are and where people come from. I've always said everybody needs to work for more than one EMS system, because they get stuck in the lens of the one EMS system and they don't realize that there's other things out there, and the grass is not always greener on the other side. Sometimes it's brown.
That's right.
But they all need to look at different ways. So that, that's where I think that lens comes from, as well as, getting a different agency person perspective of what it is to be a leader, an officer, a EMS agency in general.
And that lens is going to change, like what Walters is hitting on. I'm going to look through my lens different today than I did yesterday. And even today, there could be some national event that occurs that makes me view something from a different viewpoint. Through the lens, I think to take this to something that paramedics understand is that lens is the different leads in the EKG, and that's one of the ways that I look at it. Is when I'm looking through the lens, I'm looking at different viewpoints of something from a different angle, just like in that 12 lead that we are different parts of the heart.
that officer piece of it too, it's not just who the person might be. When they're going through, we've talked about this all the time in our officer class about the transition a person goes through from being, just what they were before and not realizing they have transitioned into this paramedic or EMS mindset that sometimes is negatively influenced, and they've changed their entire life. And now they step into this management role where they're having to do these same things, but they haven't either realized they need to change their lens, or that they should even consider changing that lens when they do that, and say, hey, don't forget where you came from. Watch out, be cognizant of how negative that you can be influenced by negativity so easily because of how you come up as a paramedic. And I mean, that's what that stuff means to me. Mark, what's your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, so I think it really has a lot to do with perspective. And in order for us to kind of respect and effectively lead people, we have to respect these other lenses that other people are going to have to look through. Like I'm not going to, like John, you talk about a lot, I'm not going to be able to look through the lens of a female. I'm not going to be able to think and look through things and understand and comprehend things through that lens. I'm not going to be able to do it. I can appreciate it and I can respect it. I can acknowledge that it exists and that there's a difference, right? But much beyond that, I just need to respect and acknowledge the fact that it's there. But I think all 4 of us kind of has our own lens and the things that we kind of look through and a lot in our background and kind of, why we do what we do and where we are now. Right. So Terry, tell me more about, why you are doing what it is that you're doing with, this podcast and with the Wizard.
For sure. For me, this is where I would say this is a calling. This is not just, hey, let me get out there and let me do this. And I remember first meeting John 6.5 years ago. The first time that we sat down at lunch having a conversation about agency needs, and come to find out that was something that other agencies had that same need. And it was like, hey, you mean we're not the only ones that need some of these things? And for me, this is about what are the things that I wish that I knew before I got into my position? What are all of these pieces of the puzzle that all of a sudden, I'm finding that I need to do? And for me, it's about let's raise up that future generation. Let's give them the tools that maybe we didn't get, or let's show them some of the different things that we didn't realize or that we didn't know. And for me, that mentoring, that development piece, and it's about, let me leave the industry in a better place. Let me leave an agency in a better place than when I started 26 years ago. John, how about you?
I remember that day we were out. What was the name of that restaurant we were at? Was it
the Jolly Roger?
The Jolly Roger.
Remember
the Jolly Roger.
I take him someplace classy. I'm glad he remembers our first lunch together.
Yeah, exactly. It's ingrained in my memory forever. So is Friday the 13th and Freddy Krueger. But when we did come across that, it actually what you're talking about was something that was spawned from other meetings from when I had first come up to Northeastern North Carolina, and I sort of made my tour around to introduce myself to the agencies up in there. I was expecting to hear commonalities of like, hey, I'd just taken on the program director of the College of the Albemarle up there. And it was like, hey, what do you guys want out of your community college, looking to make partnerships? And I expected to hear things like, hey, we want some online training. We want, some more paramedics, but I didn't get that. We'd really like to have some sort of leadership and management stuff. And I'm like, I'm not that guy. And that's when Walter stepped in the picture, and I'm like, we need to put something together that looks like management. And let's use this network that we got and look at what exists and our network in North Carolina. And I know Walter's got 2 cents to throw in on this, but just to wrap up my thought on this is, when I looked at sort of the national model that existed, I was like, there's pieces of this that is very North Carolina-like. But then I got to thinking, 20 some odd years in the business, why not use the network of the people that do the job? So we reached out across North Carolina to say, hey, how do you guys do it in these other places, so we can build a very North Carolina specific thing that just so happened to start hitting on leadership points and principles as they were intended. How do you remember it, Walter?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So I was first the assistant director for the EMS agency. We had those new supervisors coming in, and we were educating them for what we thought that we were educating them to what they needed for our agency, again through that one little lens, but not really helping them out. And I guess we were helping them out per se, but probably not to the scheme that we are now. And then looking at those, and just providing a little bit, I'll say 2 cents worth of information that we were getting out. And man, those classes that were online filled up with people who wanted some information that we had not been able to get out before. And then, I think we just grew from there and actually took that first little bit to be able to tailor to where we are today, and still tailoring to where we are with leadership and education, because it is constantly changing. And you guys that are listening, we want your feedback so we can constantly change that and update that, because as John always says, and Terry always says, and Mark always says, and I always say at the end of every session we teach, this is your class, tell us what we got to do. And I think that's what makes it. Without that, we're just teaching a class. We're just giving you some basic information that.
And people are hungry for that knowledge. And when I was doing, just like you were doing in your agency, when we were doing internal stuff in our agency, it was, hey, maybe there are other ways to do this, and the way that North Carolina approaches this might be different than it is in some other states. And while there are some elements of the pillars or some of the other national things, hey, what is this network? Who else in North Carolina has been through this issue similar to us?
Well, and that's why I say when we did the online thing, when we first did officer programming, it was online. We looked and said, we're missing a component. And it was the live part of it. It needed to be in a classroom. It was so important for us to make that change based on, online made it convenient, but it really didn't give time for that full interaction, the network that is so important to do, the officer things that you're going to do. And I mean, making that move to go to a classroom base. And even though we get some feedback sometimes that says, hey, if you could offer this online, it's like, I take a minute with them and say, listen, it ain't the same when it's online. You have to have that network face-to-face interaction piece. That is what makes every class so different. That's what makes them successful. And not only that, but I remember Walter and I coming out to Dare County to do, what was it, an operations class or a supervisor class or something.
Supervisor operations class.
And that's what, that was a deeper dive into things than we'd ever done. And it was agency specific, because I remember you saying, hey, we have these specific things we need to be, covered and addressed, but we also want you to add these other universal things that happen with the principles and stuff with that. And we were able to come in there, and that really launched us, at least as far as attacking it from a look how each agency is different, because there's 100 counties, 102 EMS systems, and there's a lot of similarities. But when you break them down and there's those differences, then, that's the in-person piece. When you've got 6 agencies, 7 agencies represented inside of a class, you start saying, oh, wow, we're alike, or, hey, we're different. And,
because in that QRV class, I remember you guys bringing down the medical ambulance bus from the neighboring jurisdiction.
Right.
And I was like, what? I would have never in a million years thought to do this, and having their person and discussing what that map could be used for and stuff. And that's where you get some of that challenging precepts, thinking outside of your box.
Well, I'll use the John silo effect. We're all in our own little silos, and we don't come out of our little silos. And, this is where the people get the opportunity to talk to each other. The old saying is, don't reinvent the wheel, because it's out there somewhere, so they can look to see, what each person has and what each agency has, to be able to take something positive or negative back to their agency about way that they can fix something. Mark, what's your thoughts on, why are you doing this? What's your thought behind this?
Well, my motivation kind of actually started many years ago, actually on the fire side of things before I even got into EMS. Whenever I was the training captain or whatever then at the fire department at the time.
That's because you
And
fire guys,
we were
y'all had
training
all these years.
Yeah, don't be jealous. Don't be jealous.
Us,
Green is
us,
not a good
us,
color on you, buddy.
Us baby EMS people over here.
But I can remember, we were training a group one night and, just watching that one individual get it, like that light bulb just turn on. You just saw it activate, like they turn around and look at you like, man, look what I just done. That was kind of the start. This is there's something to this. This is more of the satisfaction than putting out a fire or getting a pulse back on a cardiac arrest or whatever, right? So as I come up through my EMS career and started teaching classes, just started teaching EMT initial credentialing classes. I saw that same light bulb come on. I was like, man, this is an opportunity. This is really hitting a spot I've not seen before, right? And so, whenever I become a training officer, that was just, my biggest goal was to try to do that. And when you get to a certain point, you start to feel like, well, what's the next big thing? What's the next step? And you want to challenge yourself. That was one thing I want to do, was challenge myself, take myself outside of my comfort zone, right? So, hey, here I am outside of my comfort zone. We're teaching these classes, and I see these light bulbs going off all across the state now, and just that opportunity just so fulfilling to me. So I guess really overall, I do it kind of I'm selfish about it. I guess that's a selfish motivation thing. I just enjoy it, right?
But this is the question that I'm gonna pose back to the three of you guys, because I still learn things every time we go to an officer class, whether it doesn't matter which one it is. I still pick up knowledge, pick up something to be able to portray in the next class that I heard this class that I hadn't heard before in another class. So, again, that light bulb coming off does that. How about you other guys with that?
I would say on the comfort zone thing, I just wanted to mention that it's interesting that you say that, Mark, because that's exactly how I feel most of our audience that comes to these classes feel. Yeah, they're thirsty. Like Terry says here, they're thirsty. They want to drink the Kool-Aid because there's nothing else out there to drink. So come out here and learn something. But at the same time, they're stepping out of their comfort zone. How could it not be, right? If you are, let's take the person that's already been promoted and they've already got some experience, and they're coming out to these management training classes that we do, and they've never had it. And then they're sitting there thinking to themselves, man, I've been either doing it really right or really wrong. And that's a comfort zone issue. And then someone that hasn't yet been promoted, it's already out of their comfort zone because they don't know what they don't know, to quote Billy Langston. They don't know what they don't know. And so it's like, hey, everybody's out of their comfort zone with that. So, and I know, Terry, I know you've talked about this a lot on the sidebar, just to, how these audiences are in our classes and where they're coming from and stuff.
Yeah. And that lens is always shifting because of those different perspectives and those statements. And for me, I think that statement of it's a selfish motivation. It is a selfish motivation because it's that Maslow self-accusation of bringing somebody up to the greatness that they have inside of them. And that's one of the things that I think we don't realize in our profession is there are so many great people that are in our agencies, that are in our profession, and being able to help them see how great they are. So, hey, look through my lens and these things, the skills that you have, let's work on this to make this better.
I think Terry read a book. And that right there should be front page news, that he read a book.
It was a book on tape.
He had a 2-hour drive today, I think, and or maybe longer, and audio.
Longer.
Hey, I'm not gonna hate. Hey, I'm
3
cool with
hours.
that. That's
3 hours and 36 minutes, but nobody's counting.
Poor thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, one thing I was thinking about a while ago, whenever you were talking about, kind of the origins of the officer program, just the need was identified, and we were starting the online deal, and then found out, we this is something we probably need to do in person. And at what point did you guys get to where you realized, like, this is about to catch on fire and this is about to spread? this is about to become a bigger thing where we're going to have to do a lot more than what we might have anticipated to start with.
Well,
but was there like a defining moment, a defining point with that?
So I'll start with that, and then John can add to it as well. So I think when we started the online portion, we started with a small number, and that number grew to large numbers. And then we had
this geography as well, because I remember and geography. Didn't you guys say that there was
multiple
states?
I
thought that was just going to be us in the Northeast, and then it was across the state. And then in a conversation, there's people from the Northeast. There's people from not just a neighboring state. There are people from hours away.
Correct. So multiple states away. Correct. So I think it started small, got big, and then we started working on Officer 2 to keep requesting Officer 1. And then there was this thing called COVID that came in place. And when COVID came into place, it kind of shut all of that out because we were having to rethink everything that we did. Then we came back online, and when we came back online, we didn't go online per se. We came back online and started doing live classes and not online classes. And I think, John, you could pick it up from here, but I think that's where we started blossoming, if that's what you want to talk about with that. Now you're getting requests.
Well, and you're right. I think what happened was we had something, it had a nice title to it. Then this is the thing I'll always say is the word of mouth, which is always, I always say in the officer classes is that Guns N' Roses, you never know that Guns N' Roses is in town, but they never have a problem selling tickets. They're always sold out. And the reason being they don't spend any money on advertising or marketing because they don't have to. And what we had done is we relied on two things. First is word of mouth, but that's only going to be as good as the area or region that they're doing it. And then number two, Terry actually came up and said, "Hey man, why don't we
say that again? Just say that one more time, a little louder, please."
Not you. So my
Terry, what?
I was talking to my friend Keith. He's my real best friend, and he was telling me that.
But you're not his, so keep going, please. I got the photographic evidence. Thank you for your service.
It's recorded just for you. It's recorded.
Mm-hmm.
There is evidence.
Might be two recordings actually.
Terry said, "Have you thought about doing a Facebook page?" And I said, "I ain't doing Facebook, man. I ain't interested in doing Facebook." And he said, "I think if you just let me just put something out there on Facebook, this might work." And I was kind of like, I don't want to be shut out to nothing because we're kind of growing or whatnot. Mark's question was, do I remember the moment? When we put that stuff on Facebook, I had to come back to Terry in like a couple of months and say, "Oh man, I think that Facebook stuff is what lit the match. That was a pretty good idea. You probably suck at everything in life, but you was pretty good with that idea." So I appreciate that, Terry.
Well, so go back to that first Officer 2 class operations that we did on the beach.
Yep.
Look how it filled up.
Filled that classroom.
That classroom was
EOC.
full.
You're talking about the EOC, right?
The EOC. It was full. It was full to the brim, and that was really the first face-to-face offering that we had, and people again came from multiple places to be able to come to that class.
So
not just the Northeast, throughout the state.
And so at that point, I said, you know what? Let's be careful because we want to make sure that we keep our message straight. And that's why when Walter mentioned a minute ago about the silo thing is that's from a community college standpoint, which is what I have half my career in, is in the community college setting. And from the community college standpoint, we had built so many things out of silos, and that for the last several years, we had been trying to break them down and get out of those silos. Well, from that lens, agencies had also built their silos. So it was like, this was our first opportunity to where we had people coming out of the silos into the same room to do things. And now you've seen agencies grow to where they recommend the program or they require it for promotion. And that's what's made it grow. Plus being relevant. We've been very clear from the get-go on this that we want to make sure that we are, we're doing the things, we're providing the service, we're doing the stuff and things. more than we are. That, and it's not an initiative other than to grow good managers. It's to stay relevant with that and let the people tell us what they need. And that's why our project continue to grow. The announcements of the new projects that are coming out in the next few weeks, are a result of that as well.
Oh, was that a cliffhanger?
Yeah, maybe it's a next week thing.
A next week thing.
Hey man,
Next
when are we
episode.
starting this? When are we starting this project thing? Chill. Soon.
Soon.
Give him some ice. It's been a little hot outside. Give him some ice.
Mm-hmm.
Da, 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 da.
Do, 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 do.